Welcome to the Real Talk Podcast, where we create conversation and community among real people about everyday issues. This is a place for you to hear truth, connect with others, and find answers to your questions. Here's your host, Alan Reed.
Hey everyone, welcome to Real Talk. I'm Alan Reed, host of the show, and today Allie and David are joining me for week 2 of a series we're calling Less Chaos.
What?
That's
What?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, man.
It's 3:45, people.
I got an icebreaker for you guys just to get us warmed up because we're needing it. It's 3:45 when we're recording this.
Before we get to that, you need to tell them what the podcast is about.
No, I was going to do that afterwards. I have it in my notes to do that. I said it's about less chaos.
Okay.
We just added so much chaos.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want me to do
I'm
that?
keeping all of this
Keep
in here.
going.
People, this is the real thing.
One take wonders.
Yep.
So the whole premise, David,
Sorry, spoiler alert.
of the series is really taking ownership of your life and learning to live a different way because chaos is here. And the series is really about different situations in our life that where there's chaos and how to deal with it. Last week we talked about anxiety, and today we're talking about noise in general, distractions in our life. And so with that, what's your favorite show?
What's your favorite type of noise?
My favorite type of noise. We're leaning into the skid here. Favorite show. I've got lots, but one that I always like, if it's on TV, I'm going to watch it, is The Office. Mm-hmm. I think that's just
a go-to.
Just a awkwardly funny, like, man, I don't know how to describe it. It's just so good. I know that you either love The Office or you hate it.
Who hates it?
My parents hate that show. Partly because my dad had to deal with people like Michael Scott when he was working for Walmart. So it's like, PTSD from working with people like that. So I kind of get that. But The Office is my go-to.
Best episode?
Dinner Party.
Yeah.
Wow. You guys know your Office.
I've watched it through at least 6 or 7 times. That's on the low number of how many times I watched through The Office.
My favorite show is probably the first show I ever watched every episode to, and it's The Nanny with Fran Drescher.
Wow.
Really?
Yes, I love that show, and I know everyone thinks that her voice is hideous and it keeps you up at night, but I absolutely love that show. I just think it's funny.
That's a deep cut.
It really is. Nick at Night.
I don't think I've ever watched. I know the show, and I don't think I've ever watched an episode of it ever.
Well,
I definitely
you're
haven't.
missing out. What, Alan?
Is that a surprise? Is it called The Nanny?
Yes.
Okay.
It was like a little bit before David and I were
80s?
probably allowed to be watching that show, but
Oh, it's an old one.
yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Probably.
Was it 80s or was it 70s?
I think it was, no. It was 90s, but it was like
90s.
early
Really?
90s, maybe late 80s.
I don't know.
Beats me.
I mean,
The Nanny.
when I think of 90s, I think of Saved by the Bell. And,
Fresh Prince, also a great show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good show. I have
Yes.
to say that.
You mean is a
And-
good show.
Is
It still holds up.
I think my
Legendary.
favorite would be similar to yours, David. I mean, we watch Office a lot, but I find myself falling. Now it like helps me to fall asleep. We'll
It's
watch
good.
something at the end
Speaking
of
of
the day.
noise, it's good noise to have on
Yes.
It is.
a background noise.
And some people are going to really question my salvation when I say this,
Oh,
but
no.
Friends, we watch
It's a classic.
Friends. It is. And I know that there's some things in
It
there that
is.
are inappropriate and all that. And we
I
just,
mean, any TV show that you watch
Yep.
really has
Yes.
just things that are not appropriate.
Yeah. And which really makes me feel guilty. With our topic today, I was telling you two before we hit the record button, like this one hits home for me. And it's because there's a lot of noise in my life right now, and it's really self-imposed noise. And this is going to really make us all feel guilty because this is in my notes. Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And maybe that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to filter out every single thing that you're watching because, the world has its negative influences, but we do need to be careful. And right now in my life, and I'll get into it here in a little bit, I just know that I need to create some margin, greater margin in my life. But we'll talk about that here in a moment. So today's topic is about noise, and we could have gone in a lot of different directions with this, but really what we're talking about, it can be almost anything, just the distractions that go on in your life, those that you allow in your life, because the reality is we allow a lot of noise in our life. And so it could be like a TV show, but really, think about those things in your life that's really keeping you from hearing your own voice in your head, much less the voice of God, where you're not spending time really meditating on the things that you need to be meditating on, focusing on, praying over, those sorts of things. So my opening question for you guys is, how much noise are you currently living with right now? Like from 1 to 10, 10 being maximum amount of noise, how much noise is in your life right now that you feel like is distracting you from the main thing?
First of all, how would you define noise? Like in a sense of what would be included in your definition of noise? Is that like things that you fill your schedule with, what other people are saying? What is it? I guess a combination of all of that?
That's a good question. I'm going to read you a short little excerpt from a mama blog that I ran across.
Mama blog?
Yes, a mama
Alan's
blog.
on the mama blog.
So it's probably been on there for 20 years, when blogging was really, big. Maybe not 20 years, but and this wasn't a Christian blog or anything like that. I just ran across it as I was going through, what are people saying about this topic. Here is something that I thought captured what noise is. This lady wrote, there is just too much noise. Noise on the television, noise in the workplace, noise outside our car windows, noise in the media, magazines, noise on Facebook and Instagram, noise coming from internal pressures to do more and to be more, noise telling us to do this or to be that, noise complaining about the issues of that problem, this or that problem, too much noise filling up space in our heads and blocking out sounds in our hearts. And there's a little bit more with that noise and sounds she plays off of. I'll share with you later. So that's it.
Blogs.
Yeah, moms are always good about explaining
They're
things.
always right, too.
Yeah, moms.
Yeah,
They
they always
know
know
it
what you're
all.
doing.
Yeah, moms are cool.
Yeah. So anyways, so just distractions. So for you, it might be slightly different, It may not be the kids right now, but a lot of other things.
I feel like a lot of the noise comes from, like you said, self-inflicted things that I fill my time with. I find that when I get home from work or just from a long day, I want to just unwind and kind of shut off my brain for a while. And unfortunately, that usually leads to like the rest of the night, just shutting off my brain. And TV doesn't make that easy, especially since there's so many shows to watch and there's just so much content out there for us to fill our time with. And TV shows are a big one for me. YouTube is a big one for me. Just watching random. I'm what my wife likes to say, I'm a closet nerd, but I'm not very I would tell you that I'm a nerd, but I like to watch just random review videos. I like to watch unboxing videos. Don't know why. It's probably because I can't afford unboxing. Oh. So you buy
opening a box.
Yes.
you buy some sort of tech thing and you watch them unbox it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I will watch videos of people buying broken electronics and they try to fix it.
Yes.
I love that. I live for that.
Wow. You are a
my
nerd.
God.
I know.
Gosh.
Man.
I as a kid, I would like to tear apart things like random remote controllers to old TVs or something and just see what's inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so my very being is I like to watch people try to fix things and put it back together.
Not necessarily a bad thing, but
No,
if you do too
but-
much of it, it's definitely can be a distraction. So from
Definitely.
a 0 to 10, where are you at?
Man.
Like it's a problem when you're getting up to
Yeah,
7,
I wouldn't say
8, 9.
eights or nines.
Yeah. Gosh.
And I think it's probably a lot more easy now, especially coming not necessarily post pandemic, but post of you're staying at home isolating thing.
Mm-hmm.
It made it so easy. And I don't think I've ever watched more Netflix or anything in my entire life than 2020.
We're not even that far into
I know.
2020.
Yep.
And we're 2022, and man,
That was raw. That's real. Transparent. Allie, how about
Yep.
you? Where are you at?
I feel like I'm at a 7, probably. Some days it really borders a 10. For me, it's that content consumption. Like there's just, it's never ending. So once I feel like I'm caught up on a show, or when Michael and I finish a series, it's like, all right, well, what are we going to watch next? And we can't figure it out. And like that causes chaos that we don't have a show lined up.
What are we going to do with ourselves?
And I'm like, why? It's just like to numb our minds of normal things in life. Like, oh, I don't feel tired, so I'm just going to turn on a show and hope that at some point I fall asleep, and it's just going to numb like everything that's going through my mind rather than me just like sorting out whatever I'm dealing with. And I feel that when it comes to, like I said, shows, but even I love books, and I don't think reading is bad at all, but if I'm constantly lost in another world, and books easily take me to that place, then I'm not paying any attention to what's happening right around me. So I would say, like I said, definitely out of 7 for sure, but there are days when it is a solid 10, and it's bad.
Yeah. Well, we're going to all sound horrible. Like, why in the world are they doing a podcast?
we're the experts.
Clearly, we're
right.
really good at being distracted.
Man, this is like caught me at a bad moment. And so when I
It
got
usually
this one
does.
on noise, it kind of sparked my my attention. And then as I started digging deeper, as in like, well, what direction do I want to go with this? It's almost like my heart and where it's at just led me to, okay, we're going to focus on this because this is really what I'm dealing with right now, to the point to where I've even thought about lately, I've got to like take a fasting from things. And so I would say I'm at an 8 or 9, which is alarming. I mean, that's not good at all. And it's YouTube, it's podcasts, and some of them are good things. Like I'm addicted to William Lane Craig. He's a guy that's an apologist and just really deep. He has a PhD in philosophy and theology and just really an interesting guy. There's some things that I love that he's talking about, some things that I disagree with, and that's kind of helping me to learn a little bit more about what I believe on some of those subjects.
Yeah.
But then it's everything, you name it. I'm listening to all kinds of stuff, and none of it's evil, but it's just filling my head with noise to where I'm not really pausing and thinking about important things, and even drowning out my wife. I just have my headphones in, I'm washing the dishes. I'm like liking the dishes because I'm actually able to have an excuse to be listening to what I'm listening to. So I'm staying busy. So it's a weird addiction, I know.
Is this your wife like conditioning
She's
you
probably
to
like,
clean?
that's why he's being so helpful.
Like a Pavlov dog.
Yeah. And she's even just said, lately, Alan, you have those things in your ears all the time.
Yeah.
And so,
But our culture creates that. Like, I kind of think society wants us to be so distracted that we just don't pay attention to anything around us.
It's the metaverse.
It's the metaverse.
It's
we're living
coming.
in it.
Yeah.
They've got us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just headphones have always been really off-putting, right? But now you don't even really see them in people's ears. It's more common to see them in than for someone to not have any at all. Yeah. Just even, you can't even go grocery shopping without that awkward conversation of, is that person talking to me, or should I answer them, or are they talking to someone else?
Yeah.
And you just walk away, and then you're rude for not answering them. So
can you help me get that off the shelf? Walk right So this just leads naturally to, where's it coming from? I think we're all admitting it's self-imposed. Mine's self-imposed for you guys as well. I'm sure there are other distractions, but the reality is we have a choice. I mean, the Bible talks about that, you know what I mean? So we're choosing these things in our life. How is it impacting you personally? We're touching on it, but let's dig a little bit deeper. Think about your personal life and where do you see it impacting, areas of your life? What are those areas?
I think for me, one thing that's always quick to go is just positivity. Even if I'm watching something happy or I'm listening to an uplifting podcast, whatever it is, my positivity is always the first to go, but it's just because I'm not focusing on like actual uplifting good things.
Yep.
So that's the first one for me. And also personally, relationships. I feel like those are the second thing to go. Michael and I have to make very intentional points to say, like, hey, I feel like, we're not paying attention to each other, even though we might be sitting here next to each other, consuming whatever content it is. We haven't chatted in a while or whatever it might be. So,
yeah. I think it's harder today than it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, because I think there literally was less distractions where it's like, well, it's just us two, and there's only 2 TV shows on today. And so, yeah, for sure. David, how about you?
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, it affects our time, and especially for married folks, it affects the relationship with your spouse. And not necessarily all those things are bad. Like Lauren and I really we're homebodies. We don't necessarily love getting out and doing a ton of stuff. We like just spending time with each other at home. And so when we're watching a TV show together or whatever, it's time that we get to spend together, and we not necessarily it's a relationship building time, but we do enjoy that time together. But there are times where we're like, we haven't had a deep, intimate talk in like weeks. And then the time that I'm a very logical thinker, and I like to soak in and think about things. And so when we're having conversations, I tend to want those distractions so I don't have to think about it. And I don't have to respond. And so I've conditioned myself to not want to do those things. So when we have those conversations, I really have to go against my personal inclination of wanting to just get away from it. And so those noises and things that we put in our lives make it so easy to escape those real talks, not just a spousal talk, but just even in friendships and things like that. It's so easy to like, what show are you guys watching? Let's talk about that. But then when you want to talk something about real, you're like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it comes down to it. It's really relationships, and that's what matters. So it's going to impact our closest relationships. It's going to impact our walk with God. In some ways, I feel like my walk with God has been really strong. And I am learning a lot because some of the things that I'm listening to are faith-based stuff, but they're still distractions. And it could easily be one of those things where I'm filling in time that I need to be spending with Ashley, or that I need to be actually not listening to someone talk about God's word, but just reading God's word. And so, so I think relationships, definitely the key. That's where the cost is coming. It's costing in relationships for sure. Yesterday we were talking about, this topic, and James was with us on Zoom, and he's been kind of self-imposed, kind of protecting himself from other people, and been sick a little bit. But we were talking, and his wife was over here, and what we were talking about, and she had a great insight that's going to lead into a question. And so I asked him to text me what she said, and I'm going to add it to the show. And it was this: my first thought was that we use noise to distract us instead of dealing with reality. And you touched on that, David. So many, after defining the noise, maybe ask, what are you using the noise to not deal with? And I'm not sure if I'm ready to answer that question, but that is like that. There's some depth there that I think the listeners, you guys need to wrestle with, what we need to wrestle with, and maybe we can touch on it. But I think that as a society, we've been so stressed. Maybe we can blame it on COVID. We can blame it on the political landscape, even though the election was how long ago?
2
year and a half,
ago.
2 years ago.
Ancient times.
We're 2 years away.
Feels like.
Sorry, you know what I mean? But it was like such heightened divisiveness. It's like there's no middle ground today. Yeah. I'm wondering if that's part of what we're dealing with. I mean, I know for myself, that was a stressful season, and it even brought a little division in my family when we were looking at just the divide that we were seeing politically, and it led to some good conversations, but also some tension. And so it just makes me reflect and think, I'm wondering if COVID and the political landscape and everything else, because I've noticed that I don't watch the news as much. That's probably a good thing. That may be one thing that I did tune out. But just that noise just to keep me from really focusing on myself and focusing on the important things of life.
Yeah.
So
I think it's fair to say that all of those things in their heightened states have led to us wanting to be more distracted and want more noise in our life. And it's funny because you were talking about division. The only time over the past few years that I've really felt like I have not been divided from friends, family, whatever, is when we're all talking about the one thing that we have in common, which is some kind of noise or distraction that we all agree upon.
Yeah.
Like there's a show. Tiger King's a good example. Like our country was so torn at that point, and here comes a distraction, and now we're all on the same page that, well, actually, no, I guess there's still some debate about Carol, but, it's just one of those things, like, the noise was put there for a reason, and that was the only time we've felt unified.
And sometimes those distractions can be good. Like a sporting event could be a good distraction away from stress. There are things, but it's like filling your head with it where it just becomes white noise, and you really can't have peaceful moments with yourself, with God, with those that you're close to. Yeah, can definitely hinder for sure. Anything else, that you guys want to share when it comes to what are you not dealing with, David?
I feel like I need to lay on the couch and then you start asking me questions.
Yeah, we need Waylon here. We haven't had him on for a while. This was his show. Waylon, where are you?
Yeah. Oh, man. I feel like I kind of hinted at it a little bit. It's easier for me to shut down and not approach difficult conversations.
Yeah.
And it's really easy for me to want those distractions, but also I find myself wanting to get angry when people want to talk about those things, especially like, I'm not like going to get angry at my wife about wanting to talk deep, but I just don't want to. And that's a problem. Like knowing that it's easier for me just to shut my brain off than it is to actually have meaningful conversation and meaningful relationships with friends and family. It's a scary place to be, and I don't like that we're talking about it because then it's a little scary.
David's going to grab like a tub of ice cream when we're done and just
That's right.
sit at his desk.
Doing these topics, and just like we did Renew at the beginning of the year, it really has forced me to reflect on some things. And so I've got a lot of notes. It's like a lot of things to work on in my life. And so it's like, one thing at a time, but still just so important. There's a couple of different passages that jumped out that I'm not going to go deep into, but like this parable was primarily talking about the gospel and receiving the gospel, but the parable of the sower in the different kind of soils, it just made me think about the seed that's planted among weeds, and like that's the noise. It's like, and maybe this is taking the passage a little bit out of context, maybe not, but it's hard sometimes to hear from God, and it's hard to listen to what God is trying to say when there's so much, growing up around us and distractions and things that are planted in our mind because of the distractions that we're allowing to feed into our mind. The other one was just Romans 12:2, do not be conformed to this age. And I'm like, right at the beginning, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So it's going right to the heart of what my distractions, at least, are mental, and some of them are very good things, but they're also laced with some things that are just a distraction. They're not necessarily bad, but they're not healthy and keeping me away from God's word. But be transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you may discern what is the good, pleasing, and perfect will of God. That's part of the cost of what we're dealing with. Yeah. And I know that there's got to be other Christians that are, that are dealing with this same thing, self-imposed noise that really may be keeping us from choosing the best. Some of these things may be good, but they're not the best thing. And in today's world, we don't need a bunch of Christians who are lacking wisdom in how to live out their life. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, I find that a lot of the times when I'm just distracted and watching random TV shows or whatever, I feel like that it actually affects my worldview without me even knowing it.
Yeah.
Like when you just become numb to certain things. Like, I mean, all the topics you talk about, Friends, and you talk about The Office, you talk about those things in there that they're ungodly things.
Yeah.
And you just become okay with it. You're like, okay, that's not bad. But then you really think about how much it affects you. Like I've found many a times where I'm like, okay, I've seen this so many times and I've seen it played out, and I'm like, okay, that's not a bad thing, but really it is. Like, there's so many things you can dive into about TV shows, and I don't want to be like, you can't watch TV and
Never.
you can't watch shows, but there are times where I catch myself thinking like, this is really affecting my worldview.
Yeah.
And I'm becoming okay with things that are not okay.
Yeah. Being conformed to this
Yeah.
age. That's literally, if we're not careful, we're going to find ourselves a whole lot further down the road than we ever intended. Kind of like what sin does, you know?
Exactly.
What's that, Veggie Tales, you know, the lie that got bigger and bigger.
The fib.
Yeah, you know, can be the same
Larry
way.
Boy.
Good old Larry Boy.
Yes, yeah.
Man, so
Well, I
much
think-
wisdom
Yes.
in a cucumber.
In a cucumber. Great. It was a great cucumber.
Yeah.
And you slip into those things so easily too.
Yep.
And I won't speak for either of you, but we all have nieces and nephews and we're children. And for me, that was the biggest thing, is realizing what I've grown to be okay with, and then letting that play out in front of my nieces and my nephews, and realizing, oh no, their eyes are too precious to see this, or their ears are too young to hear these things. And just over time, I've let things be okay that I should never have let be okay.
Yeah.
So children will make you feel very guilty.
That's why
In the
parents
best
are so
ways.
strict. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like,
And I
just
always thought, you know, like, I'm never going to be a strict parent. But the more and more I grow up, and the more I'm like seeing how the world is,
Yeah.
and like how I'm been shaped by culture, I'm like, this person's not going to date until they're married.
No,
They're
I will
not watching
handpick
TV.
every friend for my
Yeah.
child.
You
They will
have
go
to
through
Hold
interviews.
interviews
Right.
for them to be your.
I'm getting
your
the
friend.
CIA involved in my children's
Oh,
friends.
It's
Man.
such a hard balance, and this is good. This will go back to the mama blogger.
Mama
here.
blogs.
Full
She's saying
circle,
some
Mom.
insightful things that I think can really, as Christ followers, we can kind of take this and like apply it, because she didn't mention anything about. She does talk about prayer, I think, in this part of the quote here. But she says, lately I find myself craving less noise and more sounds. So she's playing off of this noise and sounds being different. More laughter and listening to the voices that really count. More music, more meditation, more prayer and reflection. More awareness and gratitude, more stillness and quiet. Clumsy feet are thundering down the stairway now. The morning frenzy is about to be. This sounds so much like a mama blog.
It is mom blog
Yeah.
to the max.
Maybe you are already in the midst of your own frenzy. We can never completely block out the noise, of course, nor do I think we should, but maybe we could all use a little less noise and a little more sound. I like that play on words. So my question is for us, you know, how do we quiet the noise? And the funny thing is we already know a lot of these answers and we just need to apply them. But let's talk about that for a minute. How do we quiet the noise? And then what does God's word say about that?
Well, I could quiet the noise if I get rid of every subscription ever, which my husband would like because it would also save money too. Anything that's ever worked for me, I've just quit cold turkey.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've only ever quit drinking soda. That was pretty much the only thing I ever had to quit in my life thus far. But it worked. So, but that's the thing. You have to recognize too. I think that's obviously the first step. Recognize and be self-aware.
I have a problem.
Yep. Oh, I thought you were just telling me you
No,
have a problem. I was agreeing. Yes,
Yeah.
you do.
Admitting it.
Yes,
you
you
have
do,
a problem.
No, yeah.
You
Admit
read
it.
too many mom blogs.
Yeah. I think you just work on it from there. Just knowing what scripture says also is huge, and then working to let it become sound rather than noise.
Yeah. Have you guys ever heard of Green Bank, West Virginia?
Nope.
Mr. Nerd over there.
No, never heard it.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of her.
This is going to be
I
fascinating.
mean, I've heard
to
John
you.
Denver sing about West Virginia, but that's about it.
Yeah. This is Green Bank, West Virginia. This town sits in a strange little place called the National Radio Quiet Zone. There's no radio waves. And
Really?
It sounds like a plot for a scary movie.
They have satellites pointed out towards like the radio waves that naturally come from space. So everything that's like space related, there's all kinds of satellites and things that are pointed up that way. And it's to quiet everything so they can just kind of
Is this like straight out of like Twin Peaks or
No,
is this like
I don't know.
the Twilight Zone?
No, this is like real stuff. You think of scientists and they're trying to learn different things because, you know, like there are noises out there and it's not like aliens. It's just like noises that space makes. So, but they have to quiet
noises.
everything so they can listen well to what's going on up there. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And,
I'm kind of creeped out by it. Why am I creeped out?
I'm a nerd when it comes to space. Like I want to fly in
I
space.
love space.
I want to go to
No.
the moon.
I
My
think
hands
space
are
is the
sweating.
coolest.
If I had $1 million, I would. Is that enough to pay for your way on one of
No.
those?
No,
Well, however
I
much
think
it costs.
Bezos paid what, billions of dollars?
Billions and billions.
Yeah. But I thought that was a really good picture of, you know, for
Wow.
them to be able to listen well to something that that's kind of far off in a way. They kind of quiet everything to be able to do that. And I'm like, that's what we need to do. We need to quiet the noise a little bit.
Cool.
So you have any thoughts?
How to quiet the noise.
How to quiet the noise? What are some?
I feel like the times that I've felt most, not like at peace, but less distracted, I've actually gone out into nature
Ooh.
and like going camping and going fishing and actually enjoying the outside. I don't know. I know there's people out there that hate that. They hate going outside. But it's really something about like just getting out and leaving where you are for just a little bit to kind of recalibrate. And I need a camping trip soon. I think I'm going camping soon, so that's good. That's good.
idea. Yeah.
Practically, besides doing
Like a solo camping, like
no, not by myself.
okay,
I mean,
Scary out there, Alan.
yeah, it is scary out there.
yeah,
But besides you're refocusing, meditating, praying, and reading the Bible, I think practically just trying to get out of your routine a little bit every now and then
that is good.
is definitely good because I'm a person of routine. I like routines.
Yeah,
But it's easy to get in a rut and easy to get comfortable.
A routine. If
A
you will.
routine, yeah.
So dumb.
Oh my gosh. Ends podcast now. But yeah, it's really good to kind of get out of your normal schedule and do something that doesn't have TV. It doesn't have cell phone. It doesn't have where you're just enjoying being quiet.
Yep.
And those are really good times where I find myself just kind of recalibrating, and it's been really helpful. And I'm really looking forward to my next camping trip.
I like that. I love that idea. Yeah, and it just got me thinking when I lived in Colorado, every year I would go on a personal retreat for like 3 days. I'd go by myself. And I wasn't camping out in the middle of nowhere.
I hope
I was
not.
at a nice hotel by a lake or something like
A
that.
little shopping
But
trip.
wow.
literally, it
Treat
was just
yourself.
like, and it was
Treat
eerie.
yourself.
It was eerie because it's like I'm an extrovert. I like people, and I get energy off of that. And so there's part of it that was uncomfortable, but at the same time, it really gave me. It took me a good little bit of time just to get comfortable with the idea of got nothing to do, you know? And so, but I use those times to just recalibrate, to look at my year, to set goals, even to think through what are the themes that we're going to be talking through this year as a church, those sorts of things. So I started thinking about that a little bit for ways to quiet the noise. And so it just made me think I just need to go back to what are my values and am I living out my values? Well, obviously I've already confessed I'm not fully living out my values. And so I need to really review those things. And Ashley and I, we actually have a meeting tonight to talk about how to be more intentional with our time.
Ooh.
And so she's the one that suggested, she's probably like, I'm going to get those earphones out of his ears. But we have talked about really spending time reading more and like watching TV less. And then just making sure that, what are our goals? What do we want to see happen this year? And even like what kind of trips do we want to take down the road? Spending time together. So we're going to review those things, and I'm going to be geeky about it. And I'm going to be like, what are our values? What do we value? And
that sounds like a nightmare to me.
I will.
Like,
totally.
To me,
I'll make it so unfun for her.
I am sweating just thinking about it because
I'm going to make it so unfun. She has this whole idea.
If you told me that in the like at the beginning of the day, that you were expecting to come home and we're going to talk about this, I would be dreading it.
You would try to catch COVID before.
I would be very, very, very scared.
You need to have a meeting with your wife and talk about what is important and prioritize. That's what we're going to do. And so that means filtering what comes in. So we're going to talk about those things. And for me, I'm adding this in. It's just investing in relationships. There are things that Ashley needs that I can't provide that other ladies can. And same with guys. Valiant Warrior at our church is so good for that reason. And so we've always made it a goal, making sure that we're investing in relationships. So we'll talk about that as well. And then just adding some playtime. I mean, most people, and I know for you guys, because I know what you do every day, we work hard, and so we need to create space, but we need to add things in, and we ought to have some playtime.
Yeah.
And we need to schedule that into our day. What fills your tank? And so for me, mountain biking fills my tank. I love hanging out with guys, and even though I haven't golfed in a long time, I love golf. I just love doing things where I can shoot the breeze with friends and just play. And so I want to be intentional with adding those things in. So that's mine. Values, am I living by it? Filter out, what do I need to bring in? And that's usually involving relationships and having fun.
Yeah.
I hate to put you on the spot, but do you have any like practical Bible application, like scripture that can really, that you go to, that when you feel not necessarily overwhelmed, but just in noise, are there places in the Bible that you're like, yeah, I can go to this and find?
Well, the convicting ones I just shared with you, it's really just like, Alan, you're heading down the wrong path, and you want to continue down this way, you're going to find yourself far off the path. And so those are the ones that I find convicting. The one that I have that I've written down for this section, and I don't, it's one that we've all heard of, but there's a reason why we hear them all the time, where there's no vision, people perish. And I think if you put that out at the individual level, if you really aren't thinking through what you value, and if you really don't have a game plan for how you're going to live that out, you really have no vision for your life. You really have no game plan. And so that's where I probably won't quote that verse tonight, but that's what we're doing. We're really looking at, this is who we are. This is what brought us together. This is what brings us joy in life. And so, without having to overly geek ourselves out, we don't have to write down our values, but they're going to naturally kind of come up. What's important to us? And let's make sure and add these things in, and let's kind of push away the things that are just fillers. Like you said, I think you were talking about this, Allie, just so we kind of numb ourselves because we've had a busy day and it's been stressful. And we're good Baptists, so we don't drink alcohol. So we're not going to numb ourselves with that. But there's a lot of other things that we can
Too much LaCroix.
You mean too much LaCroix, am I right?
Oh my gosh.
So that's what we're doing. That's kind of.
Would you say you're a type A person? Like, are you very organized? Because I'm trying to think, like,
I'm not organized. I'm type A, but I'm definitely not organized.
Yeah, like, so are you saying, like, for me, organization, it comes really hard. Like, I have to really force myself to organize things and to actually follow through.
Yeah, that means we're just dreamers. I'm the same way. If all we're doing is come up with great ideas, never implementing them,
I would love to have like all this stuff organized. That's like the dream. I love stuff that does that for me, like software and things like that. But I just never end up using them. And I feel like for me, it's really hard for me to sit down and plan out something like you're doing.
Do you have a work schedule?
No.
He's
You have
just
a
really good at
self-imposed
getting
I
his
have-
work
I
done.
have-
things come your way.
I have a set of tasks that I have.
Yeah, you told me that Wednesdays are not good to record podcasts, so you obviously have a schedule for Wednesday.
I do have a mental schedule. I guess it's
Yes,
more
yeah.
mental, but just
Just schedule those things. What do you need to do? Schedule them. Put them in your life.
to me, it's hard to organize a relationship, and maybe that's just me trying to be too lofty, but I find it stresses me out when I try to organize a relationship, or like even in just the most basic terms of my marriage, trying to organize things to where like we're sitting down and having those conversations.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just because I'm just so used to turning myself off. And I mean, that's probably a realization that I'm coming to during this podcast.
David will be a new person on the next podcast.
Probably not, but let's not get too, lofty goals here, but I'll try better. And my wife is probably at home like, yes, you need to do this. You need
She's
to organize
taking
more.
notes.
She's taking notes of how to organize.
Somebody told me one time that like it was in reference to a budget meeting, a family budget
Yep.
meeting, which just drains all the color from my skin.
Yep.
Not that I like to spend money, but I don't like to know how much we don't have.
Yep.
So they set it up as like a fun thing. So you're doing a fun activity, whether that's like maybe you're making homemade pizzas, maybe it's not a budget friendly activity, and then you get hit with the hard truth. But setting it up to where this is fun.
Yep.
And it doesn't feel like it's a draining thing. So maybe it's not so structured and organized, but you know that at some point you will address these things
Yep.
during this time period. And that's been really helpful for us. Michael is the same way. He can't organize anything. Sweet, precious human cannot organize a single thing. And he would admit to that. So I have organized his work schedule for the week, and I organize a lot of things for him, like his books and all kinds of stuff. But it brings me joy too. So just trying to find a balance of, okay, you need to take some responsibility for this, and what does that look like? But we try to make it fun. So we have organizing parties.
Absolutely.
And just this is more on the practical side of like, how do we quiet the noise? And it's why I'm trying to think of ways for me to help myself in these times where I'm feeling like, how do I get rid of the noise or quiet the noise? And so you're saying more organization is the key to
No. Yeah. No, I'm not even saying that. I'm just that you can even do it loosely, but like if you don't have a target to shoot for, then you're certainly not going to ever hit it. And so there's got to be at some point in time where you're kind of figuring out what direction are we going, or what are some things that we're going to be doing, because you can't measure them. And so I know that sounds it does. I can't say it without it not sounding like that there's some work to it.
You're
There's
going to have
gonna
to
be
work
work.
to change
Yeah.
anything. Like
Yeah.
you have to work at, if you're doing something that you don't like, or your behavior is in a way of that is not good, you definitely have to change something to make it better.
But here's another observation too. I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with silence, not like literally the absence of noise, but in this case where we're using noise as distractions. So when there aren't as many options to choose from, I think we are uncomfortable with that. Yeah. And sometimes we might even be scared of that, but recognizing how it's healthy is good. And also, I've always been taught that life begins outside my comfort zone. So maybe for you, it is.
This is a like.
Well, is this a David counseling?
Yeah, it's
session
counseling
right
sesh. I'll have to pay you guys when I leave.
now? All right. It cost a lot. So
There's a verse that I'm thinking of, and I can't remember exactly where it's at, but it's just talking about. It's the verse that just talks about running the race and casting off everything that hinders, and then focusing on the finish line, which is Christ, And so it's like, so we're actually talking about that. It's filtering out the things that are weighing us down. And we know that the one true thing that's definitely going to free us and bring us joy are the things that we know that are healthy, and it comes down to our relationship with God and our relationship with others as well. And so that's what our game plan is we're going to come up with some things that will help build in that. And it's not necessarily that we need to build in quiet times. We got that, but we're definitely needing to filter out some things. And we definitely need to have a game plan when we come home, because we are doing the same things. All three of us are doing the same things. We're going home, eating dinner, and we're exhausted, and we're turning on the TV.
Bunch of lazy bums.
Yes. So we repented. We've done the first step of repentance. Now we need to turn,
Yes.
go the other way.
Also confessed a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, I hope that this was helpful for those of you that are listening. It's an important exercise. You heard some confession, a little bit of game planning, and all of us are just going to have to figure out what does that look like moving forward. But we do want to pray for you guys, and we are praying for you guys that as you're listening, you're thinking through some things in your own life, and maybe in the way that works best for you and your family, coming up with a game plan and going for it. So thank you guys for joining us, and meet with us next week as we close out this series on Less Chaos. Have a good day.